Hi there, Prairie Plant Girl here. Well, we finally had our first frost and we're about 3 weeks late on having that frost, and it was a hard one. But I live here in Saskatchewan, Canada, and I have a pretty short growing season. We freeze hard and have lots of snow in the winter. So something that I want to be doing now is planting my spring flowering bulbs. So I've been holding on to these bulbs for a little while. Some of them were delivered to me a few weeks ago. I picked some up probably about that time as well. Picked more up since then, and the weather just hasn't been cooperating with me to get them planted. I even had to throw a few away because they've gotten rotten while they've been storing. So if you are like me and the weather's not cooperating and you have bulbs that you're storing, make sure you're checking them often, keep them somewhere cool, and open the packages up so that they can breathe and have good air circulation, and somewhere dark is a good idea as well. But now it's finally a nice enough day. It's not pouring rain, it's not gale force winds, and I can get out here and get planting. And it's the perfect time to plant because once you've had that first frost, everything is going to be going into dormancy, the soil is going to be starting to cool down, and that's what you want for these bulbs. You just want them to be able to put on a little bit of root growth down in the ground, but not start shooting leaves and stems up above ground this time of year. I like to plant tulips and daffodils. This is not for you. And daffodils when I am growing my bulbs. And this year, I've also picked up some Leucojum. So these look like a giant, what are they called? Paperweights, I think. And I'm really excited to try these and see how they do. I've never grown anything like this before. So these will be a new one for me that I'm excited to try. I thought I would first share the varieties of bulbs that I'm going to be planting, and then I'll show you some of the tools that can be used to plant the bulbs and some tips about planting bulbs. And then I'm just gonna try and get to it and get the job done. So these are the Leucojum, and I think this is just a general variety. I don't think there's anything too specialized. I think you just get what you get for those. Like I said, I'm new to them. And they look a little bit like almost like a daffodil bulb. The packaging just says they bloom in spring. So I guess I'll find out if it's early spring, late spring, mid-spring. But really here, we go so quickly from winter to summer that everything just kind of blooms in just a couple of weeks anyways. I usually look for early spring blooming bulbs if they're marked that way, because I find that they come up faster and do their bloom before the perennials are done. Otherwise, if I get late spring bloomers, they tend to be kind of trying to compete with some of the perennials and annuals that I'm putting out at the same time. So I like to get the early spring bloomers when I can. So Leucojum, and I have 25 of those. I picked up this mix of tulips. This is 30 bulbs and it's just a mix of kind of purples and whites. I always like to have purple and white tulips. I don't know why, that's what I seem to gravitate towards. Yeah, these say they bloom early to mid-spring, and because it's a mix, they'll kind of bloom at different times, but early to mid-spring. You can see the nice striping on some of them. Some are lighter purple, some are darker. I just picked those at my local hardware store. These big bags I picked up at Costco actually. This is a late tulip mix. There's 50 bulbs in here. Again, they just said spring blooming. It looks like they're probably a later spring, and I find a lot of these more decorative tulips are the later spring, which I love these beautiful doubles and peony style tulips, but they tend to bloom later. But I still like to throw a few in because they are so pretty and decorative. And then I have these are a double fringed, so you can see how the petals just have a little bit of like someone took pinking shears and just kind of fringed the edges. And then also a double, and these will be kind of early to mid-spring by the looks of things. There was 50 of these as well, and I had to pull a few out and throw them away, and I have a few here that were looking kind of iffy when I did that, but I think they're all right. So, and I think the rest are all still good. Birds are fighting at the bird feeder. So we'll get those all planted up. And then I had ordered some tulips and daffodils online. I ordered these from Vessies.com. It's not sponsored or anything. It's just one of my regular orders that I made, and I threw some bulbs in with it. So what are the daffodils called? Oh yeah, Fragrant Friends. I was having trouble finding it on the bag here. And these are in early to mid-spring, and they're mixed colors of like yellows and whites and oranges, I believe. So, and I have, how many does it say are in here? Does it tell me? Looks like it says 12. Oh yeah, it's like the bag says 12, but there's way more than 12 in the box. That's because I had 2 bags. So, and some of them have branched off to form a second one, and some are just nice big size bulbs. So you can see those. So that's the daffodils that I have, and then the tulips. They're called, these are Darwin style tulips, that more classic tulip look. These are called Big Love tulips, and these are mid to late spring, but they're this gorgeous kind of dusty rose, reddish purple. It's hard to describe the color, but they were just such a pretty tulip, so I did get these as well. And these are that Darwin tulip type, and those tend to perennialize the best, I find, and continue from year to year, whereas some of the others might come up sporadically over the next few years, but they slowly kind of get less and less and less, and they need to be replenished or replaced with something else. So when you're planting bulbs, your spring bulbs, you want to kind of look at planting whatever the width of the bulb is. This isn't a good, find a better example. Oh, this one's lost its protective cover, but you can see the bulb better that way. So it has kind of a pointy tip and then the root end, and it's going to be harder to tell on some than others. There's also crocuses are a corm, so they're a little flatter, and there's usually a little indent, and then that's the top part, and the bottom would have the little bit of roots around the bottom. So you just kind of have to look and see if you can kind of see where the roots are growing, and if you're not sure, plant them on their side, but it's best to plant them with the pointy side up or the top up if you can. And then you look and you see how wide it is, and you want to go about 3 times as wide, about 3 times as deep as the bulb is wide. So this is about to my second knuckle. So if I went there, I'd want to plant it about from here down to here. That's about the depth I'm looking for when I'm planting this bulb. So it's not so much all tulips go at this depth and all daffodils go at this depth, but it's more about the size of the bulb, and that'll indicate how deep it needs to be planted. So that's how you plant them. The bulbs contain all of the nutrients, everything they need to grow for the next season. You don't need to fertilize them when you're planting. There's lots of different fertilizers that are sold with spring flowering bulbs. Oh, put it in the hole, get them off to a good start. But those nutrients really aren't necessary because the bulb has what it needs all stored inside of it already. And you're just going to be needing to fertilize them once they've flowered and once they start to die back. That's when they're going to be taking up new nutrients to feed the bulb for the next season. So for this year, just plant the bulb. You don't need to worry about a lot of nutrients being added to the soil. You do want to find somewhere that's going to be drier in the spring or moist. You don't want anywhere that's going to have water pooling or laying in the spring, because that's when these bulbs are getting going and you will rot the bulbs. And most spring flowering bulbs would prefer to have a dry space through the summer months. So again, just try and plant them somewhere that's a little bit higher or isn't going to have a lot of heavy rain or water on it throughout the year. When I plant my bulbs, it's always a good idea to wear gloves. Just some bulbs can be irritating to skin. Hyacinths are one that I know bothers a lot of people's skin, and I know a few others do as well. I've never had a big problem with it, surprisingly, but it's still a good idea. Hyacinths are one that I don't generally plant a lot of here just because they're not really super hardy here. They sometimes will make it through, but too much money to spend on something that might not last the winter to bloom for you in the spring. I'm going to be trying one of these planter tips or auger tips for your drill this year to plant my bulbs and see how that works out. So it just hooks into your drill and you just tighten your chuck down on it, and it's supposed to make drilling the holes easier. Now, My soil is normally quite heavy and hard. We have had a lot of rain in the last week, so I'm not sure if I'll need this as much as I thought I would and normally do. But this is what I'm going to try out this year. Some other things that you might want to use for planting bulbs is a bulb planter. So this just digs down in the soil. So you push it down, you bury it down in the soil, and you could lift that soil plug out, set it aside, put your bulbs down, set this back, you squeeze the top, and it will release that soil back into the hole. It can be a handy tool, and it has measurements on the side if you want to kind of do some measuring to figure out how deep to make your hole. I, in the past, have usually just used a trowel, and I like these kind of skinnier ones. They usually have some measurements on them, and this is what I often go for when I'm planting my bulbs. So you don't need anything fancy to do it. You just need to dig some holes and get them dropped down in there. So let's get doing that. Here's a look at the first area that I'm going to be planting. So this is on the west side of my backyard, and I have the fringed double tulips down here. I have all this space where I moved the grass in, and I've made the flower beds deeper. So I'm going to do a lot of planting in that front area and kind of work it back a little bit into the rest to kind of make it all blend together. And then I have the other double tulips over here, and I'll kind of keep those to this side. And then I'm hoping to just kind of make little pockets of the Leucojum around through the whole area over there. And the rest of the tulips will go in my flower bed on the other side of the yard. So I'm going to start here. So this fringed variety is the variety that I did lose a few bulbs, but I think I have around 40 bulbs left to plant. And I think I'm going to do them in pockets of around like 3 to 5. And I have these dahlias here that have gotten frost and have died back. And like I had stated in another video, I'm not going to be saving them. I'm just going to let them rot in the ground. So I'm just going to take them off and get them out of my way. And we'll just get planting. So I think the best way is I'll just clear a little bit of, watch the gumweed I planted there, clear a little bit of the gumweed here too, of mulch, and we'll see how this drill works for this. So that's the first 3 planted. So I'm just going to keep doing that and going through the yard. And it won't look like much when I'm done, but it'll be wonderful to see in the spring. Okay, so I got the double fringe tulips and the Leucojum done, and I have the just the double assorted tulips left for this side over here. And then I need to go in and get supper going, so I think that's going to be all I'm going to get done today, because as we know, the sun sets early these days. So I'm going to just quickly try and get these popped in the ground, and then we'll pick back up with this tomorrow. Well, it's a new morning here and I'm ready to get planted again. So I have the tulip catcher bulbs left, the Big Love tulips, and the Fragrant Friends daffodils. And I'm gonna put those all over on the east side of my backyard. So I'm just gonna get to planting and get this all in the ground here. I've been using this plant auger. So I thought before I get started here, I'd give you a quick thought on what I think of it. I've had a few spots where it's kind of grabbed in. It seems to be around like tree roots and things, so it might be an area you want to be careful around. I have had trouble then getting it back out. Just put reverse on your drill, and that should help it come back out, but you may need to dig it loose a little bit. But it takes a little bit of finessing, and I found kind of going up and down a few times to really clear the whole of the soil helps. But this isn't the like big brand name auger, but it seems to be working just fine, and it was a fraction of the cost. I believe I picked this up at Vessie's Seeds. It might have been T&T Seeds, but yeah, so far I've been pretty happy with it, and it's really saved my hand and wrist when planting this many bulbs. So I think I've planted something like 120 bulbs already, and I have about 70 or 80 left to go. So it's really been a big help for me in the yard. Maybe worth the investment, at least for a cheaper one anyways. So I'm gonna get to planting. Okay, that didn't take long and I got them all planted up there. So I put the flowering friends, daffodils kind of along the portion of the flower bed in front of the fence there. So I have a little walkway halfway through this flower bed, and I just sprinkled those through that area there. There's some Angelique tulips that I planted in there last year, so I'm really hoping they come up. And then the daffodils will be in there, and that'll be a nice spring show on that side of the walkway. And then I put the big love tulips over on this side just by the grass and under this ash tree a little bit, and then out this way. And then on this end, kind of from the shed over towards the center, I put the eye catcher, it's just that purple kind of blend of tulips. And then there's daffodils that I put in last year kind of in the center area here. So that should be, give me that tulip and daffodil spring show on that side there. Over on this side, so the west side of the yard, I have the fringed double tulips starting kind of under the chokecherry tree there. And they kind of go along to about, there's a hydrangea there. And then I have the Leucojum kind of planted in, kind of overlapping with the tulips and then going that way, and overlapping with the double tulips go that way over and right under this ash tree right over here. Where is it? So the bulb display doesn't look like much right now, and it can be a little bit hard to get in the mood to plant spring flowering bulbs when you're planting them in the fall, and all you have to see is some bunched up dirt in the end. But it is worth it come spring, after you've had that long, cold, gray winter, and then you get to see that big spring show before some of the other perennials and annuals aren't ready to be doing their thing. So I think it's well worth the little bit of effort. I do have to say that putting that little planting auger on that drill made this job a lot easier than it has been for me in the past, and I got it done a lot faster. Another way that you can kind of speed it up, if your flower beds allow for it, like last year I had a new flower bed that I had built, and I just set some daffodils and Angelique tulip bulbs down on the ground surface, and I just emptied out my old flower pots and used that old soil on top of them and gave them that planting depth that way. So I just kind of, I set the bulbs into the soil so they're standing up and firmly in the soil, and then I just set all that old used potting soil on top, and that built up the flower beds for me and also got those bulbs planted. I wasn't sure how well it would work out, but it turned out fabulous, and I had a great show this spring. So I'd highly recommend that if you have a bed that you're able to pile extra soil on. Now, of course, if you have a lot of perennials in that bed, then you don't want to be raising that soil level up and burying your perennials. But for a new bed like that, or one that you just plant annuals in, that worked really well for me. So hopefully you enjoyed seeing those spring bulbs go in the ground. What was that? That was, I wonder how many I planted. 230-ish bulbs there. It's not exact math there, but just over 200 bulbs that went in the ground. So that'll be a nice show in the spring. You combine that with the bulbs I already had. And I did take the bulbs that I had forced, if you saw my videos this spring, where I'd forced some bulbs in pots in my greenhouse to put outside early on in the spring. I took those bulbs and I planted them under the ash trees in my backyard. And some of them for sure will come back next spring and give me a show. Not all of them, but I think I had close to 100 bulbs there that I put under my ash trees. So there's going to be hopefully a good spring show come up next year for me. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.